The alarm hadn't even finished its first wail when the classroom erupted into chaos. Professor Dean Harlow looked up from his datapad, mildly annoyed that his lecture on pre-warp civilizations had been interrupted. Around him, 23 students from a dozen different species were scrambling for cover with the kind of panic usually reserved for hull breaches or imminent reactor meltdowns. Velcor, the Threxian who always sat in the front row, had wedged his considerable bulk beneath a desk designed for someone half his size. His crystalline carapace scraped against the metal frame as he whimpered something in his native tongue. The twin Ethel students had activated their personal shield generators, a clear violation of classroom policy, and huddled together near the emergency exit. Even Sareth, the stoic Vorn who claimed her species had conquered fear through genetic modification 3 centuries ago, had pressed herself flat against the wall, her third eye frantically scanning for threats. "Really?" Dean muttered, setting down his datapad. The source of this pandemonium sat in the middle of the classroom, looking equally confused by the commotion. Ricky, no larger than a human toddler, tilted his head and let out a curious chirp. His orange and black striped fur was still fluffy with youth, and his oversized paws suggested he had considerable growing left to do. The cub's tail swished back and forth as he examined a dropped stylus with the intense fascination only babies could muster. "Predator," someone shrieked from beneath a desk. "Apex predator in the classroom." Dean pinched the bridge of his nose. "It's literally a cub. Sir, please initiate emergency protocols." Velcor's voice cracked with terror. "That creature could kill us all." Ricky, apparently delighted by all the attention, bounded toward the nearest desk. The student underneath, a Quillen named Missit, let out a sound that Dean was fairly certain could shatter glass at the right frequency. The cub stopped, startled, then sneezed. He sneezed, Dean said flatly. The terrifying apex predator sneezed. "Humans don't understand." Sareth called out, her usual composure completely abandoned. "That's a Terran tiger, one of the most dangerous land predators in the known galaxy." "Terran Bengal tiger," Dean corrected, walking calmly toward Ricky. "And he's 6 weeks old." "Do you know what 6-week-old tiger cubs do? They tumble over their own feet and need their mothers to teach them how to hunt. They're about as dangerous as a particularly motivated house cat." Ricky, proving Dean's point, attempted to pounce on his own tail, spun in a circle, and promptly fell over. "Professor, step away from it," one of the Ethel twins shouted. "Your species may have death wish programming, but we don't." Dean scooped up Ricky with the practiced ease of someone who'd grown up around animals. The cub immediately began purring, a sound that reverberated through his tiny chest like a miniature engine, and tried to gnaw on Dean's thumb with teeth that hadn't even fully come in yet. "See? Absolutely terrifying." Dean held up the cub, who dangled contentedly in his grip, paws making little grasping motions at the air. "This is what you're all hiding from." A baby who can't even open his eyes fully yet and thinks my finger is a particularly interesting toy. Slowly, hesitantly, a few heads emerged from beneath desks. They stared at the professor and the cub with the kind of disbelief usually reserved for impossible physics. But the teeth," Missit whispered, still pressed against the wall, "and the claws." "Retractable claws that he doesn't know how to use yet," Dean explained patiently, scratching behind Ricky's rounded ears. The cub's purring intensified. "And yes, he has teeth. So do most of you. Velcor, you're literally a silicon-based life form that can digest metals. You're more dangerous than this little guy." "That's different," Velcor protested weakly, though he hadn't yet attempted to extract himself from beneath the desk. "I'm sapient. That thing is a predator. A natural predator." "Right. I forgot." Dean's voice dripped with sarcasm. "On Earth, we somehow managed to survive sharing a planet with creatures like this for millions of years. How careless of us not to go extinct." Ricky yawned, displaying his tiny fangs, and several students flinched. Dean couldn't help but laugh. "You want to know the really crazy part?" He settled into his chair, Ricky now curled up in his lap like an oversized, striped kitten. "Humans domesticated these guys' cousins. We share our homes with smaller versions. Feed them, play with them, let them sleep on our beds. We turned apex predators into companions." "That's insane," Sareth breathed, though she'd finally stepped away from the wall. "Your species is insane." "Maybe." Dean shrugged, gently stroking Ricky's soft fur. The cub had already fallen asleep, his sides rising and falling with each breath, Or maybe we just understand something the rest of you don't. Predators aren't monsters. They're animals. Complex, intelligent, and yes, dangerous when fully grown, but still just animals. This little guy isn't thinking about how to murder you all. He's thinking about his next meal when he can play next, and whether that dust particle floating through the air is worth investigating. Gradually, the classroom began to return to normal. Students emerged from their hiding spots, though they kept a respectful distance from Dean's desk. The shields flickered off. Emergency services, who'd been alerted by the alarm, arrived to find the crisis consisted of one sleeping tiger cub and 24 embarrassed students. So, Dean said once everyone had settled back into their seats, still keeping Ricky in his lap. As I was saying before we were interrupted, pre-warp civilizations often develop interesting relationships with their planetary ecosystems. On Earth, humans shared their world with creatures that could absolutely destroy them in single combat. Ricky's ancestors could take down prey 3 times their size. And yet we thrived, not by eliminating threats but by understanding them, by respecting them, sometimes even by befriending them. He looked around at his students who were now watching with a mixture of fascination and lingering wariness. That's the human difference. We don't just survive alongside apex predators. We study them, protect them, even love them. Because we learned a long time ago that the universe isn't divided into safe and dangerous. It's all just nature. And nature doesn't care about our fear. Ricky chose that moment to wake up, stretch with a squeaky yawn and attempt to bite Dean's stylus. The professor gently redirected the cub's attention to a proper chew toy he'd pulled from his bag. Any questions? Dean asked his class. 23 hands remained firmly down, but 23 pairs of eyes, or their equivalents, watched the human and the tiger cub with something that might have been the beginning of understanding. Or at least, Dean thought, a healthy respect for human insanity.